So, just in case anyone is still in doubt that the Supreme Court's project is to, support institutions of oppression like the SPP and certain traditions of inherited wealth and the legacy of education and who that legacy belongs to. I'll read the headline of a Fox News video, and I'll improvise around that headline in an iterative poem that I hope will be relentlessly repetitive. Well, to the best of my ability, I'll attempt not to offer transformative iterations that that get in the way of the maniacal repetition that I hope I can perform. But I probably won't be able to do that because I sort of have an improvisatory jazz spirit that really is charmed and driven by variations and permutations rather than relentless repetition. So we'll see how well we fare with that. But the headline says Supreme Court blocks Biden's student loan forgiveness plan.
Supreme Court blocks Biden's student loan forgiveness plan, noting that, historically and traditionally, the legacy of a higher education belongs to the wealthy. Supreme Court blocks Biden's student loan forgiveness plan, citing evidence that, historically and traditionally, only the wealthy have had the right to a higher education. Supreme Court blocks Biden's student loan forgiveness plan, noting that anyone who required a loan to receive higher education didn't deserve that higher education to begin with. Supreme Court blocks Biden's student loan forgiveness plan, citing evidence that loan forgiveness plans, historically and traditionally, haven't existed in the United States because we haven't needed them, since only the wealthy ever got a higher education. Supreme Court blocks Biden's student loan forgiveness plan, citing evidence that student loan forgiveness plans, traditionally and historically, have only been received by those who can't afford otherwise to pay for an education, and that there would be an inequality represented by this forgiveness, since we're not forgiving the rich for anything that they've invested in. Supreme Court blocks Biden's student loan forgiveness plan, noting the disparity of equality between a loan forgiveness plan focused and directed towards those without wealth versus the lack of such or an equivalent program increasing the wealth of those already wealthy. Supreme Court blocks Biden's student loan forgiveness plan, citing evidence that student loan forgiveness plans historically belong to that category of program that conservatives detest. Supreme Court blocks Biden's student loan forgiveness plan, noting that any plan designed by Joe Biden must be a bad plan. Supreme Court blocks Biden's student loan forgiveness plan because apparently most of the donors that each of the members of the Supreme Court receive a large amount of cash from kind of hinted that it might be in their best interests not to forgive these loans. Supreme Court blocks Biden's student loan forgiveness plan because many of the right-wing donors to the various members of the Supreme Court have contracts in those loans and are receiving payment from the students whose loans would be forgiven. Supreme Court blocks Biden's student loan forgiveness plan because Clarence Thomas received a bit of cash from one of those loan carriers. Supreme Court blocks Biden's student loan forgiveness plan because they really don't care. Supreme Court blocks Biden's student loan forgiveness plan because that's what they think Jesus would have done. Supreme Court blocks Biden's student loan forgiveness plan because there's nothing in that plan for them. Supreme Court blocks Biden's student loan forgiveness plan because who really cares about forgiveness plans when there's so much that we can do toward taking away people's rights? Supreme Court blocks Biden's student loan forgiveness plan because that plan gets in the way of the functioning of the school-to-prison pipeline. And who doesn't love the school-to-prison pipeline? Supreme Court blocks Biden's student loan forgiveness plan because they needed something to occupy themselves with for the duration that it took to write a 237-page report on rhetorical obscenity.